Right, so the ceasefire in Lebanon was supposed to be about seeing Israel withdraw and Hezbollah be replaced in southern Lebanon by the Lebanese army, wasn't it? But it hasn't happened because Israel have not been anything like the honest brokers in this ceasefire any more than they are at any other time, because the rules don't ever seem to apply to them, do they? They're special. They're the chosen ones. Anyone who disagrees, well, we know what they get called by now, don't we? But the ceasefire is now over. No more extensions for Israel, and surprise, surprise, they're still there in Lebanon. Still hanging on to 5 hills, strategic locations they've kept that they refuse to leave from, and it's a mess the new Lebanese government must quickly get a handle on to stamp their own authority. But with Israel having failed once more to make any headway in advancing in Lebanon, amid excuses of Hezbollah breaching that same ceasefire as justification for them to remain still, and all despite Israel having breached that ceasefire 1,300 times themselves, remaining in Lebanon just continues to just shine a light on Israeli failure there, and will keep doing so until they finally do get out. Right, so instead of talking about the end of the ceasefire in Lebanon in terms of the dust settling, it's clear that Israel has no intention of fully withdrawing from Lebanese territory. Despite an extension to the ceasefire and a lousy attempt at securing another, Israeli forces remain entrenched in key areas of southern Lebanon, violating international law and inflaming tensions, just as they do everywhere else, it seems. But it's not without significant fallout both in Lebanon and in Israel, as well as the one thing Israel never runs out of: excuses, and the troubling implications of Israel's refusal to leave, though I fancy they're going to have to go at some point, since their presence just continues to underline the failure to achieve anything of note the entire time they have been there, save for terrorizing the civilians. The ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel was a fragile hope for peace in at least one region of the Middle East right now that is still seeing far too much war and genocide, all it seems being instigated by the Zionist apartheid state of Israel. A ceasefire agreement was signed up to by both Lebanon and Israel last November, but instead of honouring the agreement, Israel just carried on attacking, didn't they? Enjoying the fact they were no longer getting shot back at, frankly, just to keep advancing, keep claiming ground, keep seizing villages and more territory, and justifying it by saying, "But Hezbollah!" And the collective Western mainstream media just happily nodded their heads. Well, we're now at the point that Israel has chosen to remain in 5 key areas of southern Lebanon, defying international law, not that they ever cared about it to begin with, and the will of the Lebanese people, not that they care much about that either. Why is Israel still there? What are their excuses this time then, Damo? Well, Israel has withdrawn from most of southern Lebanon, but remains entrenched in 5 strategic locations, which have been the hills of Kfar Shuba, the Sheba Farms area, Gajar, and 2 other key positions as well. These areas are not just random patches of land, of course, they're strategically significant. They're offering control over water resources, surveillance capabilities, and military advantage. They've got the high ground, so to speak. Israel couldn't take these positions when they were fighting Hezbollah, so now they've got them, they're refusing to let go of them again. By controlling areas of water supply, much as we've seen Israel doing in southern Syria, where Israel are in control of the Yarmouk Basin, they can use water to exert pressure. That's a major water source for Syria and for Jordan. Plus there's the recent threats to Egypt and the plan that got leaked whereby Israel have designs on possibly destroying the Aswan High Dam, all in violation of international laws. These are threatening water supplies, a war crime, as that is internationally recognised as. So why is Israel still there? Well, officially Israel claims that these positions are necessary for security reasons, and they argue that withdrawing completely would leave northern Israel vulnerable to attacks from Hezbollah. Not that the inhabitants of northern Israel are convinced by Israeli promises that they will be safe from attack even now, and they have still been refusing to return home. Even they aren't daft enough to take Netanyahu at his word, so why should the rest of us be? But Israel cannot hold positions like this in another state. It's someone else's territory. It's clearly a breach of Lebanese sovereignty. Lebanon has a right to defend itself, does it not? There should be an international response in condemnation of Israel for trying to occupy foreign territory here and squatting on it, as well as elsewhere, that they're doing it as well. But it's Israel, isn't it? They get a free pass from too many. The new Lebanese government, though, new president, Joseph Aoun, led by Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, has been unequivocal in its condemnation of Israel's continued occupation. Well, that's great, fine, but you need to do something about it before much longer, surely. Israel's presence is a flagrant violation of Lebanese sovereignty, as Salam's predecessor, Najib Mikati, made it clear, and having been obviously that, and demanding an immediate withdrawal, it still hasn't happening. Israel isn't listening. Instead, they've doubled down. The IDF launching strikes on Lebanese army sites and border crossings, further escalation of tensions, and then there's just the abuse of the areas they've occupied, which, well, frankly, it's beggars belief. Here's an example of what they've been up to according to Al-Mayadeen. I do hope you have a strong stomach. In the village of Qiyam, South Lebanon, an Al-Mayadeen journalist visited one of the houses that was used as an HQ by Israeli occupation forces during the war. He reported that it was one of the only houses left standing without serious damage. However, it was covered in filth and had serious internal destruction. Meal screen doors had been blasted open with explosives, and the outside and inside walls had been sprayed with automatic weapon fire, shattering walls and windows and shredding children's clothes. Food items, including Israeli packaged rations, were strewn all over the floors, and each room had been wrecked in some way. Bathroom fittings were smashed and bullets fired at the refrigerator. Bullet cartridges, weapons packages, condoms and women's sanitary products were all over the floor, alongside the rotted food. Furniture was damaged or destroyed. Most notably, he said that the occupation forces did not use the toilets, but collected their excrement in bags and dumped them in washing machines. Now, I thought I'd heard it all when I first read about Benjamin Netanyahu taking all his dirty laundry to the US with him every time he visits to get it washed. But this is on a whole new level. In the name of swiftly moving on, let's take a closer look at these 5 occupied areas Israel aren't going to leave. But let's bring this story back up to the here and now. Amongst these sites, the hills of Kfar Shuba and Sheba Farms are probably the most contentious. These areas are rich in water resources, which Israel has long sought to control. As aforementioned, it's a war crime to withhold water, but occupying such areas gives Israel that option, and we've seen them doing it or threatening it elsewhere. Goodness knows they certainly were happy enough to cut the water off into Gaza, weren't they? Gajar is a village split between Lebanon and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, part of Syria, as they are, despite Israeli claims to it. And this is another flashpoint underlining the reality of the situation, being that Israel's refusal to leave these areas has nothing to do with security as they claim, but is about controlling resources, exerting power, and control over Lebanon itself. But here's the thing, though. For all their efforts, Israel's continued occupation of southern Lebanon, not just being illegal for all the aforementioned reasons, it's also been a colossal waste of time and effort for the majority of their part. Despite all the claims about Israel and their military prowess, Israel has achieved nothing of note in Lebanon, and one of their own newspapers has made this crystal clear in an absolutely damning piece published in Maariv. 5 settlement points, 0 lessons, 18 years in Lebanon taught us nothing. Re-establishing military sites that the Israeli army abandoned 25 years ago in the Lebanese border area is a mistake, and it is a mistake that many mothers and fathers will cry over. The Israeli army was stuck in Lebanon for 18 years. It created 2 security zones in Lebanon, but it soon became clear that this security belt, which was supposed to protect the northern settlements, turned into a trap for soldiers who served in these military positions. Providing security and safety for the residents of the north does not come by establishing military sites on Lebanese soil, but by being prepared for a test like the 7th of October. Response over establishment of military sites is more important in their view. I would argue not be a racist thug of a regional neighbour, a pariah state in the Middle East that punches down non-whites in land they illegally occupy would do more for regional stability and peace. But that's just me. What do I know, eh? Add to all of this, though, that Israel haven't defeated Hezbollah in the slightest. They haven't secured their northern border, and the people from those areas refuse to go back home, not feeling safe to do so. They haven't won the hearts and minds of their own people over Lebanon either. Yet another failure they're chalking up to Netanyahu and his rabid hard-right government that controls him more than he controls it. All Israel have actually done is perpetuate a cycle of violence and suffering, as they do in every territory they seize, control or occupy, or attempt to. So what's Lebanon going to do then? Well, Hezbollah, having abided by the ceasefire for the most part, have been deliberating this, it seems. An excerpt from The Cradle, who have covered this, goes into some detail of what they might be up to next in a meeting between them and another Lebanese political party, the Amal movement, who, like Hezbollah, are considered part of the Iranian-led axis of resistance. And a statement has come out in response to this. The ongoing occupation of significant portions of Lebanese territory by the enemy constitutes state terrorism and underscores the aggressive and premeditated nature of this adversary's intentions toward Lebanon. We strongly condemn the persistent Zionist violations of Lebanese sovereignty, which blatantly contravene UN Resolution 1701 and the ceasefire agreement. We reiterate our unwavering rejection of any occupation remaining on Lebanese soil, particularly in the south. The international community and the nations overseeing the ceasefire agreement bear responsibility for addressing Israeli violations and must take immediate action. Rebuilding what has been destroyed by Israeli aggression and providing compensation to those affected must be a top priority on the new Lebanese government's agenda. Ball is very much in the court of the Lebanese President Joseph Aoun and his government now to do something, it seems. That is the message they are sending anyway. Frankly, you would imagine that Israel had bigger problems right now, and those problems are coming from Egypt. You see, details of their plan to rebuild Gaza without ethnically cleansing the entire strip, as Donald Trump has suggested doing, have begun to come out. And it looks like the plan is not only viable, despite the time it might take and the expense, but one much of the Arab world could agree to. And if it does receive that kind of widespread assent, Israel and its Western allies are in for a world of problems. Though if they can sell the idea to Trump, as they plan to try and do, the problems will be even more Israel's than Israel's alone. Can Sisi sell this idea to Trump, though? There might be an incentive in it for him at the end of it. Check out the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch, therefore. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new content published daily. And it also helps support the channel at the same time too, which is very much appreciated. And I will therefore hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.